No worries.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. This evening we are joined by Amy Sands, who works for S3 Solutions. So she's going to be taking us through a presentation in grant applications and possible funding down the line. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat, or Amy will give a few minutes at the end for questions and answers. So I'll hand it over to you, and thanks a million, Amy.
Thank you, Vivian. Just to get started then, as Vivian mentioned, my name's Amy Sands and I am a senior client advisor within S3 Solutions. And my main role is identifying and completing funding applications and bids for organisations like yourselves. So today's presentation will be on excelling in grant applications and a basic introduction to funding. I'm aware maybe some sports clubs have more knowledge than others, but we'll take it back to the start and we'll just go through exactly what's needed before we even look at an application. So contents has seven main themes just for this evening. First of all, we'll look at the current context on the sports clubs, identifying funding priorities and broadening your funding opportunities, the basic practical approach, which will have five key themes. Key aspects of a funding application, useful tips, useful resources, and discussion and questions just at the end then, as Vivian mentioned. So don't forget as we go along, you may think of some questions, just pop them in the box so you don't forget about them. And then I can come back at the end then and we can look at the questions and see what people may be asking. So first up, current contacts and funding challenges. So as mentioned, within some sports organisations, they might have a vary of people who have applied before or don't know where to start. So basically, these four key points that'll come up on the screen now is what we'll be touching on throughout. So we haven't applied to funding before and we don't know where to start. We have some funding experience but could do with more support on how best to answer application questions. We're not sure how best to source grants and apply for ones that are relevant to us. And lastly, we aren't sure how to come up with a project idea and what costs to include in the budget. So again, just have a think of what position do you feel that your group may be sitting in, as we talk about then sort of each key element as we go through. First things first is identifying funding priorities within your organisation, within your sports clubs. So it's thinking about what do we actually need. So in order to identify funding priorities, I always mention getting together with the committee members, getting together with volunteers, coaches, just the main body of your organisation, and think about what it is that you actually need within the club. Is it the likes of equipment? Is it nets? Is it venue hire if you don't have your own facility? Then think about then what do we want? So it's not necessarily something that we need, but it would be a nice to have. We can think about the short-term goals, which is anything between 6 months to 12 months, and then we'll look at anything longer, 12 months and plus for long-term goals. So once sports clubs identify what your priorities are, you'll have a list and it'll make looking for funding opportunities that bit easier because you'll know exactly what it is you need, what does the club need in order to improve, and then you can identify funds to go along with that then. So identifying your funding priorities. So generally within Gaelic clubs, our main aim is to increase participation and enhance competition within ladies Gaelic football. However, grassroots clubs have great potential to contribute to social agenda, which can broaden your funding opportunities beyond sports grants alone. So we always think of whenever we think of a sports club or Gaelic club looking for funding, we think that it must have to be, for example, something sport related in the title of the fund. That's not necessarily always the case. Ladies Gaelic football can link in with many other things. For example, how can we link football with mental health? How can we bring women and girls from different communities together? And how can we address rural and social isolation through football? So again, as mentioned, some funds might come out. For example, there's a fund that is literally called the Mental Health Fund. And Gaelic clubs may look at that and think mental health fund, that's not up our street, that's not our revenue, that's not what we kind of work on. But it's thinking about how can we link Gaelic football with mental health. So well, along with mental health, it's always mental health and well-being. And how do you improve that? You can improve that through physical activity and sport and recreation, which is the Gaelic football. So that's how we link. It's also the same as addressing rural and social isolation. There is grants out there, for example, DARA from the Department of Agriculture, and it's the main target of that is addressing rural isolation. So again, how can we link football within that? So if there are rural groups out there, it's about putting in place, for example, a 10-week program to get those in the rural area to come together, socialize, make new friends, and build upon their mental and physical well-being through sport. So there are different ways and different avenues that we can go down. It's not necessarily just about football. We can tailor and bring other elements into our grants as well. So a new fund has opened up, and that looks like it might suit our group, but where do we begin? So as mentioned in the contents page, these are the five key themes that we'll be looking at today. So it's about reading the online summary information sheet. It's referring to the fund's guidance notes. It's checking what supporting documents are required for the grant. Does it align with your funding priorities? And once you've developed your idea, then you begin writing. So we'll go through each one with a few examples as well. So first up is the Honourable Irish Society grant, and that is based within the six counties. This is a very small scale application worth up to £2,000, and it's a small scale one that kind of focuses on programme based and the likes of equipment. As you can see here, just across the top tab, which highlighted in red, charitable grants. So that's literally once you go onto their website, you click that tab and it breaks down into recent grants, guidelines, and applications. So it's very straightforward and how you go on. See the recent grantees who have been successful in the past, and that kind of gives you an idea and a good steer of what might they fund in the future and for your own group. Then they have the guidelines, which is we'll go into shortly here, and then it'll be then the actual application stage. Another example is the Sports Capital and Equipment Grant. Although this is guidance notes from 2023, we hope that the Sports Capital Grant should be opening the summer of 2025 coming. We're just kind of waiting on the details of it to be released. Again, as you can see on the main document, it lets you know the opening date, the closing date, the different tiers of funding that there is. So it's broken up into facility funding and then broken up into equipment funding as the other half, and they're both capped at certain numbers there. Then we go on to the examples of the projects, what they will actually fund, which we can go back and look at your own priority list that you guys would have made, hopefully, and then you can see, well, do we identify any of these? Do they link in with our own list, what it is that we need, our short-term and our long-term goals? And then just there at the end, you can see that there's priorities that the funder have identified, so you must be hitting one of those targets then as well. The last example then is the Wind Farm Community Fund. And again, there's plenty of wind farms across the counties. And once we click into one of these wind farms, it will actually break down and show you exactly where it is situated. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, it brings you up the address of the landfill. It tells you the maximum amount of value that it's worth, £3,000, and the area of benefit must be 10 kilometres. So not only with the wind farm, but there is certain funders that ask to be within a certain radius of the fund. So it's just important to understand that when we're looking at the guidance notes of applications, that we can see, do we actually meet that criteria of the area of benefit? So there's a certain website that I use, and it's called dougal.co.uk, which just essentially measures the distance from one location to the other. We must remember there, as you can see highlighted in red, we have to calculate as the crow flies. So in location one, I would put in my sports club or the wind farm, and then the same for location two, put the other one then in there. As you can see from the red dot to the green dot, it is 8.7 kilometres just underneath where the circle is red. So that means that this club would be eligible for this specific funding. So a lot of funders do ask, but however, if they had been anywhere over 10 kilometres, they would not be eligible for the fund, and it immediately then puts you off. There's no point in looking any further essentially because the grant isn't suitable for your sports club. So the second key step then is referring to the guidance notes. So the example on the left is the Honourable Irish. Again, it's easily broken up into how to apply, what to include, when to apply by, your priorities, and again, successful applicants, which is in the past. So that's a very straightforward, easy to access, and easy to get around the website on the Honourable Irish. However, on the other hand, this is a wind farm 14-page PDF document, which is also how guidance notes can be generated. It is mostly through a PDF document as opposed to on their actual website. So as you can see on the front page there, it mentions the fund opening date and the fund closing date. And then within this actual document, there will be key information on what you need to know before you even can apply and look at the application stage. Checking what supporting documents are required. So there's kind of a main 5, 6 key documents required for all applications. But for this one in particular, this guidance notes is guidance notes of the ESB wind farm. So as you can see, a copy of your organisation's bank, which is like the likes of an online bank, a statement or credit union statement, copy of your organisation's signed and dated constitution. Quotations are required. So quotations can vary between applications given on the size and the amount that the funder is awarding. So in this case, if any item is under £5,000 or euro, you need one quote. If anything is over £5,000 or euro, you will need to obtain then 3 quotes from 3 different suppliers. Again, then if works are relating to renovation, construction, refurbishment, anything of that bigger capital, that larger capital size scale, then we would be looking at planning permission and also attaching your lease ownership or your proof of long-term lease. If you don't own your own facility, most funders will ask for a long-term lease of at least 10 years plus. So that's always good to know if you are looking to do a bit of work to the facility, the pitch, the clubhouse that you may have a long-term lease on. It's just always good to get that lease to be 10 years plus for in order to complete works into it. Then in terms of the Sports Capital and Equipment Grant, which we hope should be opening this summer of 2025. So as you can see here, this is taken straight from the guidance notes and it's about supporting documents. So as you can see, the fund basically lets you know what type of document can be uploaded and the formats that electronic files that are password protected, are rejected. Ensure that any electronic files on your computer are registered on the application. The maximum file for a single upload is 5 MB, and the file name should consist of numbers and letters, not the nine. So it's your responsibility to make sure that all the upload documents are correct. If there is a certain document that has been forgotten about on the application and it is required and it's essential for the application, you'll be rejected from the application completely. Um, Again, the Sports Capital and Equipment Grant are actually giving you common pitfalls. So this is obviously from previous applications that people are putting in and they're not doing the correct things and they're getting rejected. So again, title or access to the land where the project is being developed. So people have not provided that document and also they've not signed it and dated it. So own funding, people are maybe forgetting to put in bank statements or the loan, and also as well, the bank statements must be within 3 months. So if you don't submit your bank statement, again, application will be rejected. Or for example, an easy one is wrong documents are uploaded or the same documents are uploaded multiple times. Just making sure that on your own document list and your own folders that your policies and your procedures are all named correctly on your own folder. So then once you're uploading it, it just makes it that bit easier then for multiple uploads and see exactly I've uploaded my constitution, my accounts are there, my recent bank statement within 3 months is there, and then any other policies or leases that the application may require. The last one there, number 4 in common pitfalls, is a real important one. So it's the application's not started on time. So we can see at the start, whenever we look at a grant, it tells us, first of all, the opening date and the closing date. That's the first 2 things that I'll always look for when completing an application. And the third thing is how much is the grant worth? So if I know, for example, a grant is closing today, the 10th of March, I'll never submit an application on the day of submission because most applications nowadays are done on an online portal and some of those can crash. So I would never leave it to the day off. I would always make sure that it's submitted a day or two at least before. And that gives me then enough time to know I need to prep the application, complete the application, send it maybe to somebody else to review on the within the club, and then get it back and get it submitted. So it's just making sure that we have sufficient time. And some applications may be smaller than others, so it's just knowing, having a good look through the application, gathering all the information and evidence that's needed before we actually make a start. And then once we make a start, then hopefully the ball will just roll in throughout the whole application and make it that bit easier for you. So what else might I need when completing a funding application? As mentioned, a well-written grant is time wasted if not accompanied with the right supporting documents. As you can see here, these are the essential criteria for any basic funding application. So a constitution signed and dated, safeguarding policy, equality policy, a recent bank statement, usually within 3 months, funders will ask for, annual accounts audited or prepared by a club treasurer, a committee list with contact details, deeds, lease or rental agreements, and this is obviously for the larger scale and capital works. So most of these documents stay the same except for the committee list with contact details. This may change yearly at AGMs, which is perfectly fine, but the rest of these documents, that once they're signed and dated and once they're uploaded online or amended. I know some clubs maybe review their policies every 12 to 18 months. That's perfectly fine. Just get them signed and dated and get them back into one folder where you can keep all core documents because these are, as I say, these are the basic ones that all funders will ask for. If maybe any clubs are struggling with templates of policies and constitutions, that there is a few links that we can look at the end just on tools and resources on basically how to upload and how to put in the correct information on the policies and what's required from different funders. So linking back, does it align with your funding priorities? So again, thinking back to the document that if you have met with your committee, coaches and volunteers and thinking what it is our club actually needs. So this is where we can look in with applications. For example, this is the Sports Capital and Equipment Programme. As you can see here, the main aims, let me just minimize this, sorry. The main aims of this specific fund is the first bullet point, so assist voluntary and community organisations and NGBs, high quality, accessible, well designed, sustainable facilities in appropriate locations. So all groups here will be voluntary and community organisation or an NGB, which is perfectly fine. And the main aim of that is to provide appropriate equipment to help maximise participation in sport and physical recreation. So that is something that every club on this webinar this evening should be aiming towards, maximising participation in sport and physical recreation. Also, another funding priority or objective within this fund is prioritise the needs of disadvantaged areas and groups in the provision of sports facilities, increase female participation, and encourage the sharing of sports facilities. So if we can think back to if you do have already a priority list completed for your club, and if you feel that any of your priorities link in with these, and maybe if they don't link in, essentially, maybe you want to create, for example, a 12-week program. You can say, for example, target then females only, and again encourage sharing the sports facilities. Maybe allow other clubs and organisations to use your facilities as well as you improve them. So aligning with your funding priorities for Honourable Irish, as you can see here on the left, just underneath the red writing priorities, priority will be given to applicants within the following areas. If you look here, some sports clubs might look and automatically think this fund isn't maybe suitable for us, but that's only a priority. So for example, if a funder is inundated with applications and they're maybe really oversubscribed, then this is what it'll come down to then at the bottom line. But if you look just at the second half of the bullet points, then it says applicants must fall within at least one of the following charitable purposes listed below. And as you can see, the advancement of amateur sport is there. So for the Honourable Irish Society application, This is where the sports clubs that are online this evening will fall into the advancement of amateur sport. And then if we can think back to then the priorities. So for example, I know quite recently I done one for a sports organisation and they were situated in a severely deprived area and I was able to target disadvantaged young people for their program. So it's just maybe thinking outside the box that you don't feel that disadvantaged young people are probably in more areas than you think. For example, the likes of a rural organisation, a rural sports club as well. So those young people will be at a disadvantage because the area will not be able to offer as many opportunities maybe as other young people can get in other areas. So it's just trying to think outside the box and think outside of just the sport and the football element of it, that there is actually other elements that we can bring in. That goes back to, for example, the mental health and the rural and social isolation. That's how we can target in these other documents. Then for the wind farm, as you can see here on the bullet points, that within this we must meet at least one of the following categories. And as you can see, the last bullet point is recreation, sport, and social inclusion. So within the Wind Fund farms, it's more of a kind of a middle class one. So Honourable Irish application is for small scale programmes and it's only worth £2,000. The wind farms, the amounts vary. They can go anywhere between maybe £2,000 and £5,000, but they can offer a bit more in what they deliver. So for example, if there's any clubs that are looking maybe to change lighting in the clubhouse or in changing rooms, then they'll be eligible to apply under the energy efficiency and sustainability element of the wind farm fund. So it's not only about sport, recreation, and social inclusion, there are other elements there that we can apply for. So once you've developed your idea and what you have on your priority list links with the funding, it's time to begin writing your application. So you've been tasked to complete grants for your group, but maybe you're not sure where to begin. So knowing how to complete the funding application is a key first step. Generally, you'll be required to answer questions on the following areas. So first up is group background. This section is the same on every application. It'll ask you the organisation name, it'll ask you contact details, it'll ask you the aims, objectives, and key activities of your club. It'll ask, some will vary to others, some might be asked for committee members, names and contact details. Others may ask, for example, the date of formation of the sports club as well. But once we have a solid group background completed on one application, this can be easily taken and used for other applications because, as I say, they are the similar questions for each application for the background. Then we go into project description. So it's what exactly you want to do, what is it you're requesting funding for, and how will the funding be spent. So each application might vary depending on what it is you want to do for the club. So for example, a description for a 12-week program, increasing participation and skills might be completely different to a large capital, for example, program where you need to maybe relay 3G pitch or do works in the changing rooms. So that question will differ on depending on what it is you're actually looking to deliver. Then project need. So how do you know that this project is needed? So we can all sit around a table and discuss what we need for the club and what would be great for the club, but it's just about an application. It's backing that up with evidence. So how on paper can we say that this is actually needed with then backed up statistics? So, as mentioned there, consider using deprivation statistics or survey findings or results from pilot projects. So maybe you have a previous pilot project that had run, you got funding for maybe a small 3, 6 week program. It was a success. But how do we tell the funder that it was a success? So that's always about then going and monitor and getting survey findings from the participants and getting them to fill out a questionnaire on a few questions on the project, and then that can be used then as a part of the need going forward. This question is important, we'll touch on it again in the next couple of slides. So partnership working, This is recommended if applicable, if you're going to work with another organisation, another sports club, another group in the community, whatever it may be for the fund that you're applying for. Always try and receive a letter of support for the application, as this can always strengthen the application if they can see that there's maybe going to be a bit of partnership working and two groups are coming together to deliver, which will always make the project that bit stronger. And then the last section is the budget. So it's always about be clear and specific in what you're requesting. So in the guidance notes previously that we looked at for the wind farm, they had asked for anything under £5,000 needed one quote, but anything then over 5,000 needed three quotes. So within this budget section, it's just always clear. It'll tell you how many quotes, hopefully, that the funder is looking for within the budget section. If not, there will be just a document upload section at the end, and that's where then we can upload the specific costs and the specific documents that we've received. But again, it's just about being clear. So for example, there, it's two football coaches at £25 per hour, 4 hours each, and three over 3 days. And then it'll always ask you then to tally up what the cost is and then the overall cost of what you're applying for within the fund. So as I mentioned then, the need question is one of the most important questions within an application. As you can see here, this was taken from another fund quite recently, that each question is marked at a certain percentage. So as you can see, the need weighs 23% of the overall application. Everything else is 16, 12, or 8. Okay, so that's what we really need to hone down on what it is the need, how did the project come about, and how can you demonstrate there is a real need for your project. So this is a great example of how I can demonstrate need if I'm doing applications within the 6 counties. So it's a website called NISRA, Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency. You just pop in your postcode and so it just generates. So this is just a postcode near where my office is based in Ardoyne. And as you can see here, the deprivation rank is the overall total is 890. So 890, it means you're least deprived. If you're down towards the ones and the twos, then you're in the most deprived area. So as you can see here, deprivation rank is 9 out of 890, which equates to around 2% most deprived. So the super output area of this is Ardoyne 3. They're classed in an urban area and they're within the top 2% for multiple deprivation measures. So if I'm trying to get across my point to say, well, this project's extremely needed, this is why it's needed, this area is severely deprived. Again, if we look on the right-hand side of the screen, income deprivation is ranked 67 out of 890. Employment is ranked 12. Maybe if you go on down, income affecting children is ranked 46. So whenever sports clubs gets funded on board, they tend to run programs for free because they're getting funding to run it. And this is one of the reasons why we need to keep programs free and accessible for young people, given that these types of areas, for example, may not have, and it would be a financial barrier and a prevention of young people to join. So that's the kind of angle that we would take. Again, likes of crime and disorder is ranked within the top 16 out of 890. So maybe creating a program to take young people off the streets to hopefully prevent and decrease the amount of crime and disorder within the areas. So if we can pop just your postcode in and then just in, and it generates then basically all these statistics for you, and you just pop that into then your application. Some applications also ask for a document upload of need, and this is I would just screenshot as the two screenshots that I've done here. I would screenshot that and attach that onto the application as well, because that's my evidence then. That's where I've got these statistics from. They're not just made up, they are on the NISRA website. Then so as I mentioned, that was for the 6 counties is NISRA. And then for the 26 counties, there's two similar websites, sorry. One is POBL and the other one is the Central Statistics Office. And it breaks down into deprivation as well. And you can just type in your postcode or your area and it'll generate the statistics again for you. So it's really important that we keep the need question as big as we can and get as much valuable information with statistics and make sure that our answers are always backed up with what it is that we're saying. So there's some useful resources here. I will just come out of that quickly and just flick my screen. So the first one is supporting communities. And this basically always gives you an update on new funds that are out there or if there's any changes to funds. So it was last updated on Friday the 7th. And as you can see, it's just letting you know that there are programs that are reopening for second round funding. Coca-Cola Thank You is accepting applications now. And it gives you kind of a brief rundown as well on what the fund is. So, for example, this is for projects 16 to 25 in Ireland and Northern Ireland. The total budget is 200,000. Funding must be spent between the 31st of May 2026, and then the closing date for applicants is the 26th of March. So it's always important to know, okay, it's opened now, it closes the 26th of March, that's in 16 days. Do I need to run a program or something within the ages of 16 to 25? And then we can see what it is exactly that the fund is looking us to do. The next one is Community Foundation Ireland. Again, the websites are quite easy to navigate around. Here is just the apply for funding section. You scroll on down and it lets you know then what grants are opened. Let's see. So here there's two current open grants, RT Toy Show and another wind farm community benefit. And again, as mentioned, some funds do eligibility checklist. So before you can even progress on to starting an application, it'll make you maybe do a few tick boxes and a few questions and answers before it'll say, yes, you're eligible or no, you're not. And again, key documents. So governing document, which is your constitution, signed and dated. They also need a bank statement and then some extra, maybe additional documents that they require. So the next one is Community Foundation Northern Ireland. Again, apply for funding and just keep scrolling down and it'll tell you the grants that are opened. Closing date, the area that it's going to focus on, the grant size, and then the priorities. So Community Foundation is usually quite a straightforward one that it lets you know exactly everything you need within this before even clicking find out more. And again, there is three current grants that are opened there. The next slide is government document. So as we can see here, let's see if I keep scrolling. It just lets us know then different departments. So the Sports Capital Programme, Large Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund, and Local Authority Swimming. So if we go into the Sports Capital grant, which is the guidance notes that I had attached from 2023, which should be hopefully opening on this summer 2025, and it just gives you a breakdown. So if anybody is interested in the Sports Capital grant, you could potentially go in and have a look of what was requested the last time and just kind of get yourself in order for the summer for whenever the application does open. It is usually an online system. Um, and that again is the priorities that I have screenshotted and is on the slideshow as well. So another grant then, which will be applicable to the majority of groups, is the local enhancement programme. So it's filtered out through different council areas. So just depending on the council that you guys may be in, that some, I know for example, Donegal have already opened their round for it, and they have just, in this document, it's just breaking down how much they've got and what they will be funding essentially. And the same goes for, so this one is the local enhancement programme, and then the same goes for community recognition fund. Again, it's separated into different council areas, and you can see here there's a list of successful applicants and the type of applications that they will fund, and just a bit about the amount that is available. There's 900 projects. Again, this was last year's guidance for 2024. But as you can see, there has been more money added to the pot then for 2025. So again, just keep an eye out on the council websites for those. Um, sorry. Um, and so that's the useful resources. And then have we any questions? Just going to have a wee look just in the any questions in the chat so far?
Yeah, there's one come in there, Amy. It says, is sport capital and equipment program available to Ulster clubs as it's run by Irish government?
Yeah, so you should be able to. I'm just going to see if I can get the guidance for the sports capital. Mm. So it's usually not applicable for clubs in Ulster or up the north due to we have our own council areas. So within these councils, they're separated into their own priorities in the LSPs. But for the we would just have to keep an eye on our own sort of smaller council areas, and our one would be Sport NI that we would be looking for funding.
Good stuff. Thanks for that, Amy. And then I suppose Amy brought up there when she was talking about different applications and what you might need to submit, she brought up that club constitution. So just for any club that is a standalone LGFA, your club constitution is the official guide. So the official guidebook, you just use that as your, you just adopt that as your club constitution, just to let you make sure you're all aware of that.
Yeah, and just make sure that that has a signature and a date as well. Just whenever we are uploading to funders.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, that's it. Thanks, Millie. I'm going to stop the recording here now.
Okay.